Dear listener, last spring I hosted the Embodied Educator Summit series. Some of you might know. We had an amazing lineup of 25 international speakers all around embodied education. And today I felt like I wanted to share some of that goodness and gems with every one of you out there in the educational or being an educator in your life. And with so much pleasure, I gift you the conversation I had with blessed Dr. Niki Elliott. So I also have a tiny request. If you can think of anyone around you, a fellow educator, who might be at their edge of their capacity, might be teaching capacity, might be parenting, might be any other, please feel free to share this conversation or any other of the podcast with anyone who needs it to keep the spark of embodiment flowing around. May this episode bring you love and light on your embodied journey inside and outside your classroom.
Hi there, beautiful
Hello.
educators. I'm so grateful and excited you're here with us at the Embodied Educator Summit series. How to break through curriculum stress, master the art of attunement, and steward true change your learners yearn for. I'm your host, Liz Wientjes, and I am over the moon to introduce you to one of my most profound teachers over the last years. And that was through PVI and also in the Mindful Village platform where she does wonderful work. And she deeply guides me how to embody true equity as educator in great capacity. And the multitudinous of her work, embodied work, is grounded in soul, soma, and a lot of science. That's also what I like. And educators who have adopted her mind-body approach report significant reductions in expulsion rates for students of color, improvements in classroom climates, and increases in professional well-being. With a huge heartfelt appreciation, Dr. Niki, welcome here.
Thank you so much, Liz. It's an honor to be with you.
Yeah, thank you. And how are you here today before I introduce you some more? I'd love to hear.
I'm doing really well today. My birthday was yesterday, so I'm feeling very full of love and excitement for my life and the community that supports me. So you caught me at a good day.
Beautiful. Congratulations. I didn't know.
You.
A little bit after party for you then.
Mhm.
I wish you a blissful year.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let me introduce you a little bit more to the audience. Niki Elliott, also known to me, so I'll probably call her Dr. Niki. Dr. Niki has a PhD and serves as a director for the Center for Embodied Equity and Neurodiversity at the University of San Diego. In this role, she leads the development of research projects and professional certificates for PEI 12 school counselors and college faculty. Prior to this appointment, she served for 7 years as the founding director of the Center for Neurodiversity, Learning and Wellness at the University of Laverne. As a high-energy, spirited, and inspiring teacher-educator, Niki has taught students of all ages for more than 30 years. She is a staunch advocate for students whose lived experiences include learning disabilities, mental health diagnoses, foster care placements, and/or racialized marginalization. Her mission is to galvanize an education workforce that establishes trauma-informed, neuro-inclusive learning communities where all students and educators thrive. And presently, Niki is a sought-after keynote speaker, retreat facilitator, curriculum developer, and trainer. Her unique approach to integrating applied educational neuroscience with mind-body nervous system wellness has supported thousands of administrators, educators, and counselors around the world. And she delivers these teachings through the Heart-Centered Connections curriculum. And in addition, Niki serves on the teaching faculty and the board of directors for the Polyvagal Institute, PVI, and the certificate program she has developed with the PVI has been implemented by school districts, family service agencies, and helping professionals across the US and 13 other countries globally. Niki is a native of Southern California, where she presently resides with a family. She earned a doctorate in education at UCLA, in addition to holistic certifications in yoga, mindfulness meditation, and clinical breathwork. And with her wonderful nervous system metaphors and so many beautiful expressions, you feel her greatest joy is helping education professionals establish a mind-body connection for improving learning, for outcomes for students of all ages and abilities. Thank you so much, Dr. Niki, for being here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. So it's always a mouthful, the introductions and everything. I always have to land a little bit then in the conversation. So maybe we can start with the role of embodiment in your journey and how you grew into embodiment, becoming also part of your educational journey and how that was woven into your personal and professional life.
So thank you. I'm a career educator. I started off over 30 years ago as a classroom assistant and a classroom teacher, and continued all the way up to where I am now as a teacher educator. But I would say about 10 years into my journey, I had a traumatic experience in my own life. I would call it a life shock.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that experience, I started to have very profound nervous system sensitivity. So sensory overwhelm, auditory sensory overwhelm, visual overwhelm, and I would even, I guess the word that some people might use it, empathic overload, to where I could feel when I was in large crowds of people, very energetically overwhelmed. And I didn't have a language for it at the time. You know, I was very conventional in my approach to medicine and healthcare, but none of those conventional treatments, grief counseling therapies, none of it was producing a significant result for me. And I was finding myself withdrawing more and more from society and from social life, because the only time I didn't feel overwhelmed was when there were very few people around and the spaces were quiet and dark. And that wasn't how I wanted to live. So that helped me expand, and with some recommendations from some holistic providers that I trusted, started exploring yoga. Kundalini yoga specifically is a very significant nervous system yoga with that combination of breath, movement, and sound that I now understand is significant for helping to reset the nervous system. And once I started noticing differences from that, I looked into other types of energy healing modalities and started to want to learn about them. And so I started doing certifications and learned more then about trauma-informed approaches to mind-body connection. And so I got certified in breath, body, mind, Kundalini yoga, Reiki. And as I started to feel better from my understanding of this more holistic approach and acupuncture, I started looking at the children that I was serving in schools that were having a lot of mood, learning, or behavior challenges that were blinding people from seeing the actual brilliance that they had. So it was just this interesting convergence where my own journey to get my nervous system back on track from trauma kind of intersected with observing students in a different way. And I started getting permission from the charter school I was affiliated with a few years later to try some of the mind-body approaches with the children who were struggling. And we created an independent studies classroom where we had first graders through fifth graders combined in one large classroom where they could work at their ability level, not according to their grade level, but they had the space for the sensory environment, the space for mind-body environment, and it was all built in to the way the classroom ran. And we saw such a tremendous drop in behaviors and an increase in grade over grade standardized testing that I knew that what was missing was that understanding of how the nervous system is impacted in the learning process. And I never looked back from that point. And once teachers started asking me, how are you getting that kid to sit still? How's that kid not banging their head against the wall anymore? Then teachers started coming, asking to learn what it is that my teaching partner and I were doing in that experimental classroom. And that's where we grew from there till today.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Yeah.
So unfortunately, you know, we wish to not have to go through trauma, but what I continue to find is that our most challenging experiences in life shift us off of our conventional paths and crack open a whole new world of possibility. So that's
Yeah.
what happened to me.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of wounded healers stories.
Mhm.
There's the most profound
Yes.
shift happening. Yeah. Although we don't always need our children to have that trauma like go through, and our
Yeah, if we
nervous
can
system
spare them,
approach.
yeah, I would love to be able to. And that's the impetus of the work. What drives it, I would say,
Yeah.
is if we as adults can understand that a lot of what we're doing with children is based on things we assumed were standard practice before we had the science to
Yeah.
help us correct and shift course. And that's just the passion that our children shouldn't have to go through it just because we went through it or just because that's the way we've always done school.
Yeah. We've been taught to. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe can we dive in then in what it is that you bring, not just in that classroom where you started off, but also
Mhm.
now with the big shift you're bringing into the educational world, where it's all lying on this base of nervous system work.
Mhm.
And for me, it starts with this: we're all wired for connection starting point, which brings us to your background with all the work, but also at the Polyvagal Institute, where I got to meet you with our social engagement system. Just for our listeners to get a little bit an idea on what it is we're talking about, for the ones who already know the nervous system, but the ones who don't, like, maybe let's start there in the States briefly, and then we can explore how it translates to the learning space and how you work
Okay.
with it. That
So
works?
just to clarify, you're asking to just kind of unpack polyvagal theory a little bit, or the science of felt safety, or why it comes
The
so that
science of
we're
felt
wired.
safety, and then the
Okay.
states, maybe just for our language to know a little bit, like fight, flight, freeze, what we're talking
Okay.
about. Yeah.
Absolutely. So bumping into polyvagal theory was a real game changer for me in trying to help people understand the impact that I was seeing from the nervous system work.
Yeah.
Um, I understood, from that yogic perspective, that we were shifting nervous system state and improving parasympathetic capacity with the practices that we were doing. But it still felt really abstract. So when I bumped into polyvagal theory and understood those three core principles of polyvagal theory, it was a huge game changer in my ability to talk about the impact of the shift and to be able to package it in a way that teachers and parents and
Wow.
counselors could really understand our impact on children. And so the first principle of polyvagal theory is hierarchy. And so what that is suggesting is that um, like the ideal or optimal baseline state of our nervous system is this state of felt safety,
Yeah.
of feeling comfortable in the environment, of no need for vigilance, where most of us are living in a kind of perpetual survival mode.
Yeah. Maybe depending on the country at the moment, but
And we would call that green zone of ventrovagal safety. So saying that the vagus nerve is perceiving a state of safety where there's no need for protection or alarm or hypervigilance any kind. So when we feel safe in a connection with a person, with our environment, within our own body, we're able to activate that, what we call the ventrovagal, without going too far in the science, that safe zone.
yeah.
When we're perceiving a threat, if I don't feel physically or psychologically safe, if I feel disrespected or unliked, if I feel a sense of not being good enough to belong, and again, that could either be physical or psychological or social threat of exclusion or marginalization, Polyvagal would say that the nervous system would downshift into the red zone of mobilized state. So now I'm starting to be mobilized in maybe fight behaviors or flight behaviors to try to restore that sense of safety. So that could look for many people like becoming verbally or physically aggressive, or feeling very anxious, or feeling very ready to flee and get out of the space. And an interesting thing that Polyvagal suggests is that as long as we feel we could fight back or do something to restore ourselves to that sense of safety, we'll stay in that mobilized state. But at a certain point, if an energy of hopelessness sets in, where the nervous system kind of is scanning and suggesting, I can't win this fight. No matter what I do, it won't make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
then our survival mechanisms are set to help us preserve what capacity we have. And so it would downshift again into what we would call the immobilized or shutdown zone, the dorsal vagal, which is where we freeze, we play dead, we dissociate so that the body, the consciousness is not feeling the pain of the assault that we cannot get out of, right? So we see that a lot in schools where students are seeming disconnected and unengaged, but they're really in a functional shutdown state where they're in a state of hopelessness. Nothing I do can win, so why make a difference? Why try? Nothing I do can make a difference.
Yeah.
So understanding that we can begin to observe students' behaviors from a different lens rather than just automatically assuming that we're observing willful misbehavior when they're mobilized or when they're seeming shut down, we can say, oh, I'm observing a nervous system survival state potentially. What might have triggered them out of that state of safety? And that all comes from a second neural principle in Polyvagal of neuroception, this idea that our nervous systems are scanning unconscious below the level of awareness to decide whether we're in that safe zone.
Yeah.
And then the third principle I think is the most important for this idea that we're wired for connection, which is co-regulation, right? So it's this understanding that our job, particularly as adults, and it's not this idea of attachment is only needed from 0 to 5, but that throughout the lifespan, not just to a certain age, we are wired to shift nervous system state, to get into that safe zone by connecting and harmonizing and co-regulating with the nervous systems of others around us, particularly the adults or the authority person that's in charge. So that capacity that we have as leaders to have a settled nervous system to allow us to be a healthy point of co-regulation for a child is really the power that we have to support students for optimal learning and behavior. So the three principles: hierarchy, neuroception, and co-regulation. So we really help teachers understand that we really have to teach from the nervous system first in order to activate and to access the learning centers of the brain.
Yeah, yeah. And when you say teach from the nervous system first, this immediately, because I've been following you for a while, then the two-train track comes up for me, like as educators, right? Where it's you do it for yourself and then your classroom. So could you take us into this two-train track approach that I just love? I love quoting you on this one, to be honest, because it's so helpful to realize that it happens on two layers.
Yes. So a lot of times, when I'm sharing this work with educators, parents, people will push back a lot. Okay, you're making it my fault. Another way you're saying whatever's going on with kids is my fault as the adult. It's my fault as the parent or the teacher. When are you going to teach them that the world is rough and they need to be able to get it on their own, And so both can be true is what I'm trying to say as it relates to the two-train track. We have to run both, and both are equally important. Number one, we as adults, as leaders, we must take responsibility for the nervous system conditioning and state that we bring into our interactions and engagements. We have to look at the ways in which we are bringing an unsettled nervous system. We're showing up mobilized. We're showing up, disassociated and disconnected. The ways in which the physical environment that we've created for children is triggering and unsupportive of their sensory needs and relational needs. So we are part of the environment that needs to adjust for children. And at the same time, we need to help youth and students build their nervous system capacity to be able to be internally regulated and to eventually be able to signal felt safety within themselves, even when they might be in environments where they're not getting the warm, fuzzy connection, that they can still stay grounded enough to achieve and to perform well. So both have to be true. We can't only, right now, our behavior processes are only looking to do what is needed to fix the child, but being far less reflective about the adult and the environment. And this work is asking us to run both train tracks build both train tracks at the same time. And now that train can run when both the student is equipped with capacity building and when the adult takes responsibility for the environment that's being created.
Yeah. That's so beautiful because I mean, co-regulation, you can't, it doesn't work any other way, does it? Because
Right.
it needs to, but they also need to interact with each other.
Yes.
We're wired that way. Our body does that immediately between us,
Mm-hmm.
inside
And that's why
us.
I'm always telling people, please remember to keep the co in co-regulation, you know.
Yeah.
But it's also that piece on co-regulation is about us as adults not believing or stop believing that it's only our job to have this one-way transmission toward children. That is us as the expert, us as the authority, pushing knowledge, insight, instruction, care toward the child
Yeah.
or the student, and recognizing that even in their whatever behavioral state they might be in, whatever developmental state there might be in,
Yeah.
there are tremendous ways that those youth can bless us back and nourish us in ways that have a bi-directional connection and up-leveling. And it really humbles us to know that there's things that we can learn and receive back from children, even while we continue to hold the position of responsibility within the relationship.
Yeah. For me, that now feels so normal. And you explaining and addressing this is like, yeah, of course. But it wasn't, of course, a couple of years ago. So I think
Right.
that's such a beautiful reflection, but also to realize when doing this work that what you just brought into the room, the pushback can be there and it happens gradually over time.
It does.
But then
Because for many of us, it's a rewiring of how we were raised, and culturally,
yes.
children are seen and not heard. What adults say goes without question. Like, it's so many things on every level of how we've been indoctrinated that this goes against when we look at it from this perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Yeah. And then the beauty of this work is that you also bring it to the classroom on the level of equity. And that's where I got to meet you, where you brought the whole nervous system to another level, where it's about, and you already addressed this, of course, in this two-train trek, where it's about us as well finding our biases and catching ourselves on where are my triggers and where might I step into the room in the red or the blue zone and not be in the green ventral, so I can't provide the safety the learners need. And I'm just thinking out loud, and I'm checking my phone to put it on silent, so I got distracted for a second because I didn't want any sound. How can we find our way into explaining to the audience how equity is related to our nervous system here and in the way you approach that?
Yes. So again, what I really love about this work is it kind of depersonalizes a lot of the stress points that people have when they talk about equity, bias, marginalization. I like to reframe it as identity threat, because it's something that we all face. I would say even in the United States right now, as we're looking at this anti-DEI backlash in the US, everything going against diversity, going against equity, going against inclusion, because they feel it's like reverse racism toward the white dominant social class in America, right? That's still a perception of identity threat. Right. So there's a perception that my identity, my status in this society is being challenged. And not just in America, but in other Western cultures around the globe right now. And so, as with people of color, we also experience identity threat when there's not space made for who we are, for our unique identities, whether that be around gender, race, ability, religious or sexual orientation. So it's all these complex layers of identity that we have that, depending on whether or not that particular identity construct is valued or targeted within that culture, we experience different levels of threat. Am I safe here? Sometimes I'm not physically safe because of a part of my identity. Sometimes I'm not psychologically safe if people are demeaning to me or excluding me or seeming to get some of the privilege that I think is mine. I'm not feeling good enough. I'm not feeling liked and respected. So those same three nervous system questions are really driving all human engagement. Am I safe? Do they like me? Am I good enough to belong here? So every human on this planet is subject to facing some form of identity threat when they are in social constructs that have targets on devaluing some aspect of who they are. And that's why I feel when we understand it at a nervous system level, when I perceive that identity threat, I'm out of that safe zone. I'm in survival zone. And that's going to come up in different ways. Either people who become argumentative, verbally aggressive, fighting to shift policy, shift, all of the things that we're observing. Some that flee. I'm going to run away from here. Give me a passport. Give me citizenship somewhere else. I'm going to move. I'm going to run to where I can be safe.
Yeah.
Or they shut down in the blue zone, play dead, put their head under a rock, frozen, incapacitated, hope it'll just pass by and not be able to move or act, right? So we see it playing out on every level in our identity politics, in our global politics. What we're seeing right now is one big identity threat playing out on a global scale. In our work, we say that when you are in a state of perceived threat, you do not have optimal access to the memory centers of the brain, to the co-regulating and relational bonding trust centers of the brain, nor to the frontal lobe where we have our executive functions, our impulse control, our memory, our reasoning, our strategic thinking. So the question has to be, where are my triggers around identity being pulled, and where do they show up in my nervous system? Both for the educator and for the student. Yeah. And so many people say, I'm colorblind, I treat all people fairly, I love everybody. But if we get real dirty and honest, your nervous system would say otherwise, because we've all been fed narratives through our culture, through our religious traditions, through our media, through the television that we watch, of who's safe, of who's dangerous, of who's a trusted other and who's an untrusted other. And that memory of how to survive encounters with those others has been coded into our nervous systems. So there are some people, when we're engaging, our nervous system feels familiar. So we soften, we expand, we relax, we lean in, we engage, we touch. That's a very different connection that we make to a student who is embodying the identity of someone we've been trained to perceive as a dangerous other. Our nervous system clenches, it contracts, it braces, it retreats, and it disengages. And all of that is being read by the nervous systems of students. Who is she leaning in toward? Who's she touching on the shoulder? Whose hand is she shaking? Who's she smiling at? Who's she growling at? Who she's tensed around? Who's he backing up from? All of that is now triggering a neuroception of danger in the student. Oh, they don't like me. That teacher doesn't like me, right? So for us to do our best work at embodying equity, we cannot address equity and inclusion, social connection. We can't address it from a moralistic or a cognitive perspective, because the truth of who we feel comfortable with and the truth of who we feel triggered by is broadcast by our nonverbals in our nervous system all day, every day. And those nonverbals are being read and interpreted by the nervous systems of everyone around us. And so that's the biggest work, is reconditioning our nervous systems to be able to hold the charge of difference and to rewire our nervous system to a degree of familiarity and comfort around students who embody identities that are unfamiliar to us.
Yeah.
And that's all of us. And that's why I love this work, because it's not a black and white versus white thing. It's all of us across all identity markers. And every day when we show up as a powerful leader, we're having to scan our nervous system every day for the signals that it sends that tells someone else we perceive them as a dangerous other.
Yeah.
Because it therefore shapes all the subsequent connection or disconnection that happens after that.
Yeah. And this is so profound. And I wrote down, this is almost like radical and honest work to really catch yourself on these biases. And I remember when you gave me the assignment too, to catch myself really honestly, like, which students do I turn towards and why? And I even was aware of speaking to my guest speakers and not having as many men. I was like, questioning myself honestly. Do I reject men more, that I have more women attracted to my stomach? Am I aware with conscious doing that? Is there a bias inside me that I am pro women? But it was just really the field of expertise that's having less men. I caught myself there. But it's so profound in really looking at our patterns that haven't been caught to our attention. So I feel like for all this work that is so beautifully layered, like you say, in our nervous system, what is a way into actually also talk about skills and befriending? That's a word that's coming a lot up also to our nervous system, to get a glimpse of how is it speaking to us.
So in my work, I know polyvagal theory looks, really at those principles that we talked about. And so from there, I expanded more to just study more in depth about the healing power of the vagus nerve in general, and looking at the mind-body connection in that. And so again, that led me to go back and revisit my training in Kundalini Yoga. It led me back to revisit and to do the certification in breath, body, mind, where we're taught trauma-informed breathwork practices that help increase heart rate variability. So we started looking at the science of the breath, looking at, again, things that increase heart rate variability have a direct correlation on improving the function of the vagus nerve and vagal tone. And we know that when we have higher vagal tone, we have more capacity in our nervous system for managing stressors, for boosting empathy and compassion, and building connections. And I'm especially concerned about our ability to build connections across lines of perceived difference among us, because we can all be great when we're just around people who think like us, feel like us, smell like us, feel familiar to us. But when we're with other people's unfamiliar sounds and smells and accents and customs, the nervous system is on alert because the amygdala doesn't know what to do with
it happens so fast.
Right. Yeah. So everything that a person can do that builds vagal tone, that nervous system capacity. So I'm always telling my teachers, your nervous system capacity is your greatest resource. So for some of us, that's running, and some of us, it's being outside in nature and gardening. And, so there's so many practices that support vagal tone. For me, as a breathwork teacher, I understand voluntarily regulated breathing practices being one of the fastest ways that help recondition the nervous system. And this is over a lifetime of conditioning, right? So this is not something we expect people to change in a day after you've been trained all your life that a certain man of a certain color means danger to you, to then soften your whole being and be receptive to meet people on a one-on-one basis for who they are and not for how your nervous system's been taught to brace. It's not a quick thing.
No.
So for me, I would say coherent breathing was one of the best mind-body practices that I practice on a regular basis, and then I teach on a daily basis, helping us slow the breath down to 5 breaths per minute. So research shows that 5 to 6 breaths per cycles per minute is the optimal breath rate for helping to increase heart rate variability and build vagal tone. And it's a trauma-informed practice as well. And I have found that when I'm guiding teachers to adopt that practice, start off at 5 minutes a day, then move to between 5 to 10 minutes a day. Occasionally we do 20-minute practices to really give that nervous system a chance to recondition. But it's really that combination of breath plus movement plus sound. So a lot of times people don't feel like they're successful when they yoga too. All yoga practices have a lot of physical movement before you slow down to do the breath work or the meditation. And so a lot of people aren't always aware that you need things that discharge the stress energy in the body. And Peter Levine talks about this a lot too in his embodied trauma work. We have to do more to shake, to tap, to stomp, to clap. And you think about indigenous cultures with the drumming, or the Sufis that spin and twirl for like 20 minutes before they lay down to meditate. We have to have these practices that move that stress energy, that move that fear energy from the body, to then slow down to do regulating breath or to do mindfulness meditations, loving kindness meditations, the things that boost that empathy, compassion factor, and allow us to be able to have stronger neural networks for connecting across lines of difference. So we have to stop taking it from the mind first, and we have to address it, the identity threat, from the body first, and then that's the difference.
Yeah. Can I be bold and ask you to do just a smallest practice form that you'd love to share with us to get us also into our bodies and walk our talks?
Okay, I'll do a seated one. How about that?
Perfect.
Right. So when we're in the
Lightning
office chair, because sometimes we can't always get out of our seats and go somewhere. So I would like to share a practice that I can help people do from a chair.
Yeah.
So very briefly then, whenever you do practices that twist the spine, particularly discharge practices, but any kind, our sympathetic nerves are innervating on the spinal cord. So practices that twist the spine, whether it's a twist and hold yoga posture or what we're about to do, like a spinal twist, which is a Kundalini practice, we're massaging those sympathetic nerves and helping down-regulate stress on the nervous system. So we would always start with something like that, a shake, a twist, a tap, that lets us move stress energy. And then I would like to invite you to join me in combining breath plus movement plus sound. And we'll do a few rounds of coherent breathing. And on the out breath, we'll breathe out, ah. So ah is the vowel sound that vibrates the heart. So if you think about religions all around the world, many of our deities end with the ah sound in their name, like Jehovah, Rasta, Buddha, Krishna, right? So Ave Maria. So that ah sound activates the vagus nerve at the heart center. So we'll just breathe out that ah sound, and you try to send that vibration right there. All right. So that'll be a quick practice. All right. So with Kundalini, when we're twisting, we breathe in through the nose as we turn to your left, and breathe out through the nose as you turn to your right. So the arms are up in parallel with the floor. And then I'll show the yogic pace, and you can slow it down to whatever works for you. So breathe in left. All right. And as you continue, we normally do this for like 1 to 3 minutes. We'll just do it for 30 seconds today, just so you can catch the feeling of it. Last few seconds. And then breathing in, reach up, stretch up, try to squeeze your ears and hold your breath. Breathe out, open mouth side. Then just take a moment to let your hands rest in your lap. See if you can bring all of your attention to your spine. Just bringing your awareness up and down the length of your spine. Just notice the energy of the twisting feels like in your body. When you're ready, take another deep breath in through the nose. And breathe out, open mouth. And so from here, my hands are cupped and they're sitting in my lap. And again, the breath is in and out through the nose. So with coherent breathing, I will give you a 4 count. I'll offer a 4 count. And if you join me on that 4 count, we'll breathe in for a count of 4. And then we'll be twisting the palms, pushing them up to the ceiling. And then we'll be breathing out for a count of 4 and just bringing those arms all the way back down and around back into the lap. After a few times of that, we'll breathe in the opposite way, breathe in the arms up. And then we'll breathe out with the ah sound as the hands come back down. All right. So starting with the hands resting in the lap. Empty your lungs, breathe out and through the nose to my count. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. And breathing out through the nose, 2, 3, 4. Breath in, 2, 3, 4. And breathing out, 2, 3, 4. One more this way. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. And breathing out, 2, 3, 4. And then let's reverse the arms and breathe out the ah sound on the out breath. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. And breathe out, ah. Again, breath in, 2, 3, 4. Vibrate the heart with the ah. Last time, breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, ah. And again, allowing the body to hold the still point. And can you now bring all of that attention into the center of your chest? See if you can become aware of the residual vibration of that ah sound in the center of your chest. And then finally moving your attention to the space just over the top of your head. See if you can notice one thing that feels different in your body as a result of this practice. And then when you're ready, you can reset your focus.
Like forwards.
Thank you. Yeah, so I highly recommend if you have participants in this program that really want to learn more about ways to bring trauma-informed clinical breathwork into their programs, I highly recommend contacting Breath Body Mind. Our teachers, Dr. Richard Brown and Patricia Garbara, they're psychiatrists, medical doctors that incorporate this work. And I think it's super important that when we're bringing mind-body practices to populations, that we're very careful that it's trauma-informed work. I see a lot of SEL, social-emotional learning programs going into schools. Many children with high trauma, with learning disabilities, with nervous system conditions. And sometimes this work can be more triggering than helpful and dysregulating, disorienting. Mm-hmm. So we owe it to ourselves to do our best to be really well informed when we are going into schools and other public agencies and things to try to be helpful with this kind of work.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I think that is important because sometimes as educators, and okay, it works for me, so it might work for others, but especially when you talk about neurodiversity, because I know that's another expertise you really know very well. Yeah. I know their bodies respond very differently. And like you say, also when they're traumatized and maybe we don't know, it can have the reverse effect. So don't just start experimenting.
Yes. Take time to learn the work and take the time to embody it for ourselves as well. Really, when we are sharing any type of socio-emotional, somatic, mind-body practice, we really need to show from the depth of our own cultivated nervous system capacity. And it's an ongoing thing for all of us, right? Yeah. So it's not about that there's some magic threshold you have to get to before you can be helpful to other people, but it's definitely being side by side with the people you would share this with to show that you stay in the work as a student as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that you can only model when you've been through a certain level, and then that's also only the credibility, right? Because I think the children, they know they can distinguish the crap from the meaningful and the real ones, right?
Yes, this is not a field that you can get into if you don't really embody it, because it shows really quickly and you can't hide it, and you don't get a second chance to get by people's trust when vulnerable populations have opened themselves up to you as a trusted other to support them. And then when they find the lack of integrity or the inability to repair and really model what you're leading them toward, you don't get a second chance to come back from that.
They're not, no, miss, we're not going to do that again. Bye bye. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I can imagine, because you were speaking about the pushback earlier, that they can even push back on that also, depending on the age you're working with. That.
Right. And that's where I have found, Liz, the science really breaks through. So whether I've been teaching, the science of the mind-body approach to youth or to adults, particularly people who have religious concerns about it being like a secret Eastern infiltration, into their religious beliefs and so many things. And with all due respect, there are people who are actively taught by their ministers that breathwork is allowing spirits to get into their body. I mean, it's a lot of different things that have created concerns for people.
Yeah.
And so I'm always entering with the science. I'm like, when you just breathe the way we did, that's 5 breaths per minute. This is what's changing. Do you know your right nostril is connected to your sympathetic nervous system? Your left nostril is the parasympathetic. Like, so
HRV, right? All that impact you're talking
heart rate variability, adding gas, adding brakes to the nervous system, like all of these things. And when you take the time to show what's happening in the brain and how it's quieting the amygdala and how that affects the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, being able to give you access to the learning centers of the brain, then people are willing to try it. And then once they try it and they feel the difference in their body, now they have another hook to go back and say, maybe we weren't fully informed about what this work could do. Like, that it's not just only set inside of religious context. People took the science and embedded it in spirituality to get people to practice it as part of their religion.
Yeah.
But it has its validity within science that is independent of the additive benefit you might get from it if you put spiritual devotion on top of it,
Mm-hmm.
So I think having that awareness to explain it in those ways has made it powerful for me to support people who have instinctively pushed back on the work and then later saw how much they gained and benefited from it.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you for mentioning that. And also to make us aware that our classrooms are very diverse. So it's really important because you will always have somewhere a bias of something you haven't thought of. So really, do the best.
And then there'll be some times where people, no matter how much you explain, they will go, that sounds great, but it's not for me.
Yeah.
Or, because again, this work really brings up stuffed, stored emotions. So the body will stuff and store emotions that we can't process for us, right? So it might be in the form of a back pain or in the knee or somewhere, but when it's not uncommon when people start to do this embodied work, they're like, Niki, you didn't tell me I was going to be crying. Why am I laying here crying?
You first go down. Oh, yeah.
Right? Because the body is saying, oh, I'm safe. So now you've created this environment where the nervous system can relax and people are on retreat. And now the body is like, oh, now I can release and process these things you couldn't handle before, and it's going to come up.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're not ready for that. So again, that's another thing that we have to be able to hold space as a community, like, I don't know, there was a movie called The Woman King, and it was showing like the Dahomey people, they were coming back from war, right? So they've gone off to war and they're coming back. There's a big dance. And you would say, what is this like? Why are they dancing? They just had to go off and like fight and defend. Part of it is a celebration that the people are home, but the other part is they have to now help those soldiers reset their nervous systems to come out of wartime nervous system, to come back into civilian life where they can't respond like that every time that they are triggered. So they have to create a communal practice that helps them reset their nervous systems. And they sent them to the community, built their recovery into welcoming them home. And that is the powerful thing, that we send people off to extreme experiences out in the world and things that have happened, and we expect them to just get back on their horse and go like nothing happened. And we don't, or go fix it on their own individually and then come back when you're better. And that's what we do with a lot of discipline with children. Go fix yourself over there and you can have your spot back when you know how to act right.
Yeah.
Versus it's our job as a community to help you process what the community puts you through. Because we're not traumatized in isolation. We're traumatized by the interactions with other people. So then it takes that. So community is medicine. Community was the trauma. where the trauma happened, and community is the medicine.
Is where we restore as well, if we meet it with that loving place and also do the work ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe time has to be built into that in some measure in education. And I know for some people that feels like the curriculum is slowing down or we're not hitting our standards, but then you still got a lot of children who are not accessing all these great lesson plans you've made. So why not stop and take the time to address the body and bring it
Now, so later on, it might save time, but let's give it a try. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Research and effort over time. I'm so mindful of your time, Dr. Niki, and it's almost at the hour. So I think I have to let you go with all this beautiful work. And my last question was about the role of the community in the work you do. And you just brought that up, which is so important, I think, because we also can't do it alone as educators.
Yes.
And it's so good to be reminded of that.
And that's why I say to educators, keep the co in co-regulation. Because again, we hear the word co-regulation and we automatically say it's my responsibility to help support nervous system state of the children or the people I serve, without regard to what pours back into me that nourishes me, that keeps my nervous system replenished so that I don't burn out and fall out of a career. And that's what I'm mostly concerned about as a teacher educator. I work with compassionate and passionate teachers every day, and we pour all this great knowledge and all the
All that
neuroscience.
service.
Then you burn out, and now you're being replaced by a long-term substitute teacher who doesn't know any of this, who may or may not just need a paycheck. And and so we gotta keep the people who are called in a vocation, like it's a spiritual calling to do this work and to serve in this way. And your nervous system state matters too. So community is where the teachers get poured into and get more deposits into their nervous system bank account, so they're never running on a negative.
I love that metaphor. There you are. There she is.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Niki. It was such a pleasure to run through this with you. And I hope the educators have, been inspired and opened up a little bit to awaken and to rise up slowly.
Yes.
With care.
I love it. And again, this is a lifetime journey. When you think of other professions, there's never a time where we don't stop learning more, stop conditioning. I think of athletes, they're training, they're conditioning to be ready for performance. And I think this nervous system conditioning is something that all of us as helping professionals, not just teachers, but any person whose job is connected to the nervous system of another person for healing, for improving behavior and social relations, or for learning, the conditioning of our nervous system is a part of being ready for the job. And it's an ongoing thing for the life of our career. And if we just normalize it rather than thinking of it as something we do because something's wrong with us, then we see ourselves more in the athlete lens of conditioning rather than a personal failure that you need to go get therapy or you need to go do these things to be able to function well on your job.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And
I'd rather conditioning than fixing, right? Because it's just ongoing conditioning.
Yeah, and an athlete also does it with their body. I mean, when you say an athlete, I immediately think of the embodiment of an athlete because you need it so much. You need to turn it inside out to know, that millisecond is going to help me get there.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful metaphor that also addresses that layer where it's lots of time and effort and listening and retesting and going back, coming forth. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you too. And thank you for all the audience that was here. And I'd love to close it off and hope to see you soon for more Embodied Educator Summit series. Thanks again, Dr. Niki Elliott and Liz Wientjes, and bye-bye.